Our next story is from Sri Lanka. The crisis is getting worse by the day. They're out of fuel now. Colombo's reserves have hit rock bottom. Supplies are running out. This is what's left. 1,100 tons of petrol, 7,500 tons of diesel. This may sound like a lot, but it's not sufficient even for a day. To make things worse, no fresh fuel shipments are expected. Sri Lanka has defaulted on payments. It has failed to give guarantees to lenders. So no new fuel vessels are coming to Sri Lanka. Colombo will have to manage with what it has left. How will they do it? By suspending sales. Sri Lanka has suspended the sale of fuel. It has banned fuel for everyone and everything except for essential services like trains, buses, ambulances, food vehicles, etc. This is what it means. If you own a private vehicle, you will not be able to refuel it. If you have to travel somewhere, you have to use public transport. If you're unwell and require medical help, you will have to wait for an ambulance to pick you up. How long will this ban last? 2 weeks, but there's no guarantee it will end after that. Like I said, no new fuel shipments are in sight. What is Sri Lanka doing to secure new supplies? It is reaching out to foreign companies, private suppliers that can help it restock. Let me show you this post from Kanchana Vijayasekara. He is the Minister of Power and Energy. He says companies from oil exporting nations will now be allowed to import fuel to Sri Lanka. In other words, the fuel market is now open to private players. They will be allowed to operate and distribute fuel on the island. So far, only 2 companies could do this. The Ceylon Petroleum Corporation and the Lanka Indian Oil Company, a subsidiary of the Indian Oil Corporation. Until now, only these 2 companies had retail stations in Sri Lanka. Going forward, the market will be open to all. But will Sri Lanka find takers for this plan? And I'll tell you why I asked this. Last month, they tried something similar. Sri Lanka opened fuel imports to 6 private companies. The plan failed to take off. Will this time be different? So far, only 2 private companies have shown interest, and even these are yet to seal a deal. For the Lankan government, time is running out. Public anger is boiling over. The protests seem to have spread to every segment of society. Government workers, teachers, medical staff, lawyers, they're all out on the streets protesting the shutdown.
There is a serious breakdown in the health service. If we don't get fuel, the healthcare service will collapse completely. We know by now that agriculture has collapsed. The education system has collapsed. The healthcare service has collapsed by 90%.
Healthcare workers have no way to report to work, nowhere to get fuel. Almost all vehicles in the country are parked along roads, near petrol stations. Patients don't have transport to come to hospital. Patients are dying while on the way to hospital. This country, these people were pushed here by this corrupt government.
It's a tragic state of affairs. First, there was not enough food. Then medicine supplies ran out. Now people can't even buy fuel. So it comes as no surprise that many of them are trying to leave. Look at these images. They're from Monday. What you see are Sri Lankans being apprehended from a boat, at least 47 of them in this case. They were trying to flee the country. The Lankan Navy caught them. And this is not an isolated incident. In the last 2 weeks, close to 500 people have been stopped from trying to leave Sri Lanka in small fishing boats. Where were they trying to go? Reports say a lot of these boats were bound for Australia. Some of them even made it to the Australian waters, but they were all turned back. What happens to those who return? They end up in jail. And you know what? Most of these detainees are not poor laborers. They're educated, well-off Sri Lankans, people who sold their belongings to start a new life and now seem to have no means to survive. This is what it has come down to. The crisis has not spared anyone, from the poor to the middle class to the rich and elite. They're all suffering in Sri Lanka as the political class escapes accountability. Sri Lanka's is not a fuel or a financial crisis. It is now a humanitarian crisis. WION is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news on the move.